welcome you all. Yet another week trying to explore the secret meanings of the ancient text all together and trying to keep uh, wisdom relatable to our days and times, to our particular situation and chapter in our journey of life and our spiritual journey. So today we are turning to the Mahābhārata, which is a very beautiful text. Sometimes I will say underestimated in connection to other texts in our particular tradition who are more emphasized, like the Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita itself, which is part of the Mahābhārata, or other texts, the Goswami's books. But Mahābhārata in itself is a very interesting work, preliminary in many ways to the higher zeniths, the higher areas of revelation in our esoteric tradition that need to be in place, those preliminary areas of human behavior and proper moral conduct in this world to properly understand bhakti at the same time as being beyond all that. So today I like to go to one verse from the Mahābhārata, which appears actually twice in the Mahābhārata. Sometimes you find this in different scriptures. There's one verse or more than one verse that appears more than once throughout the text. In the Bhagavatam, this happens. In the Gita, this happens. And Mahābhārata is not an exception to that rule. So we'll go today to this verse. You will find it in section 5, 3957, as well as 13,104.8. The verse says, Natat parasyā saṃdadhyāt pratikūlaṃ ātmanaḥ saṃgraheṇaiṣa dharmaḥ syāt kāmād anyaḥ pravartate. So the translation says, that which is objectionable to oneself should not be done to others. This, in summary, is dharma. Behavior contrary to this arises from kāma, that is, selfish desire. Sri Mahābhārata ki jai. So, again, very basic instructions, and most of these clips that we are sharing weekly are considerably basic, but we are trying to go do this exercise of trying to explain in the highest, deepest possible way, at least according to, in this case, my capacities, that which is basic. So we don't take basicness for granted and just run and rush into something higher without having been deep enough into what we have labeled as basic. So in this Mahābhārata verse, we have a description of dharma. Of course, the whole Mahābhārata is about dharma. If there's one word that has to be invoked to say, okay, what this book revolves around, that word probably will be dharma. Dharma can be translated in so many ways: religion, duty, function, quality. So here we have one particular definition of dharma. So it says that, again, this is common sense, but again, common sense is uncommon many times. Uncommon common sense. So Mahābhārata has many sections of this type of uncommon sense that we need to be reminded of on a daily basis to keep our spiritual project coherent. Mahābhārata brings a lot of coherence to our day-to-day, because sometimes too much theology, too much philosophy, too much esoteric content and depth can make us forget that we at the same time must remain coherent and commonsensical on the most immediate and basic elements of our life. And that's what we find in our great teachers, right? They have attained those highest peaks of transcendence while remaining very commonsensical on a daily basis. So this verse is defining dharma as that which is objectionable to yourself, that should not be done to others. So if there is something that you disagree with, that you object to, on a personal level, in your opinion, your criteria, that shouldn't be done, that shouldn't be told, that shouldn't be expressed, that's not healthy, whatever that is, then that should not be done to others. If in your estimation, according to your discernment, whatever that is, according to your criteria and whatever there is, something is objectionable, then The implication is then why you keep doing that to others many times. That could be a case. Why we contradict ourselves. Why you tell someone you shouldn't be smoking with a cigarette at hand. Just the classical example. Because that creates counter effect. Instead of inspiring other person through your example, which is acharya, that's the meaning of acharya, means you are not doing unto others what you consider objectionable. And of course, on the contrary, what you considered uh, nourishing, inspiring, favorable, that's what you are doing unto others, so to say, or that's how you are giving yourself to others. In this case, this verse may be speaking in through the via negativa system, talking in a negative way, in terms of what's objectionable and what not to do, because many times we need to begin there. But the implication, every time we find this verses or sections that speak only in negative terms, we should understand that in the implied meaning of that is you should also bring forth the positive counterpart of that, even if it's not explicitly stated in the verse. So that which is objectionable to oneself should not be done to others. That which is practical or unfavorable, this verse is the word practical. Not that parasyā saṃdadhyāt. You should not impose something practical and favorable unto others. ātmanaḥ. That, in summary, is dharma. And again, the implication is, therefore, another idea is that which is favorable, anukul, should be done to others, should be shared to others. So this is saṃgraheṇaiṣa, no saṃgraha. In summary, there are so many things we can say about dharma. So the spirit of this verse is, okay, we can talk about dharma in so many levels. We can culminate speaking about dharma in terms of divine law, prema dharma. That's a word we use. Dharma means what sustains me. Ma means to me. So you ultimately, dharma, what sustains me? God's unconditional love given to me from time without beginning. That's another way of speaking about dharma. No? Sometimes in Hinduism in general, the term Hinduism does not exist in the scriptures per se. The term that gets closer to that it's most often used is Sanatana Dharma. And Sanatana Dharma basically means, though you can translate that as eternal religion, Sanatana Dharma means that dhara, which sustains me, Sanatan, eternally. That which is sustaining each of us from time immemorial, which is God's unconditional love. So dharma implies acknowledging that fact that we are loved unconditionally by God, and naturally, after acknowledging that, the natural question is how I can give that unconditional love back. And ultimately, that takes the shape of prema dharma. So we can speak about dharma in all these levels and reaching these beautiful depths and heights. But here, Mahābhārata is giving us a more immediate, basic idea to begin with. Like in plan, okay, you want to reach those heights. That's great. That's beautiful. But that has to happen in a way that you are not skipping this one. So first, let's describe dharma in a very summarized way, like even a very basic definition, which entails everything else, which is objectionable to you. You shouldn't be doing that to others. And the implication is be utterly, strict with yourself. Be utterly discerning whether you are still doing that on some degree or not. And if you are utterly honest, probably, in most cases at least, you will find, my case for sure, you will still find you are still doing that. On some level, you are still contradicting yourself. Still, there is some form of hypocrisy, if you want to use that word, where you are considering something objectionable, but still you are doing that to others, or saying that to others, or thinking that about others, whatever the case. So first, mend that. First, do your homework in that. First, put your own room in order before trying to reach the highest or the higher versions of Dharma, explanations of Dharma, experiences of Dharma. And of course, the last part of the verse is saying, kāmād anyaḥ pravartate. In other words, if we still are not doing that, if we still are failing to this basic expression of Dharma, behavior contrary to this arises from kāma. So that's because of kāma. And kāma means selfish desire, always to clarify, because many times Karma is translated very loosely as lust, which can be, of course, and karma is not necessarily a bad word. It is used to describe the love of the gopis for Krishna, romantic love, romantic transcendental lust, kāmātmika bhakti, kāma bhakti. But karma also can refer to carnal pleasure, in which overindulge carnal pleasures. But karma in general means desire in a very generic way. And in this negative context means selfish desire, which means self-centered desire, which means I see myself as the ultimate reference point of reality, and I do not see myself as belonging to something bigger than myself. So I'm putting on my own back an enormous weight and baggage, trying to be God without even acknowledging that. So that's an impossible life. That's lots of violence toward myself, an exhausting life. And the desires that come from that misunderstood perception of myself as the center. And the problem is everyone else is trying to be the center. And there's only one center. If you have a circle, right, you can only have one center in the circle. There are not more than two centers. And there's already a center. But the problem is that almost 4 billion people in this planet is struggling to be the center. Imagine if you enter a competition where 4 billion people participate, only one winner can be there. And imagine if later you realize there was already one winner. There was already someone occupying that center, but you still insist. That's so exhausting and so impossible. And you feel threatened by everyone else engaged in that competition, trying to be that center. So all that is kāma, selfish, self-centered perspective, which takes to have desires. Desire is not bad in itself, but the problem with desire is when it comes from a self-centered place, from a place where I am actually alienated from my actual identity and position, from a place when I'm not acknowledging who is the actual center, and therefore which is my position in relation to that center. So it's kind of a disjointed self-perception, self-identity. So whatever desires come from that distorted place will not be healthy, will not be dharmic, will be contradictory by nature, because we are already being a walking contradiction, because we are not living according to who we are, to what's our position in connection to the center. So if I'm already denying, so to say, or because of not because blaming anyone, but just because of ignorance, just because of lack of proper knowledge, I'm trying to live an impossible life because of avidya. Out of avidya, out of lack of knowledge, lack of vision, I insist on being a center. Intuitively, so to say, instinctively, according to my conditioned nature, I try to occupy that place. I'm trying to be someone. But the problem, it's okay to be someone, just that I happen not to be the center. So kāma means that problematic perception of everything, of me and everything. So that takes us to be adharmic. So we use terms like adharma. We are not saying they are irreligious, such bad people. It's just they are blind. They are trying, probably with the best intentions they could have, they are trying to live an impossible life. And they're insisting that something works in a way that will never work, and that is always contradictory. And so that takes us to still behave in ways like this verse describes, that whatever is objectionable to us, still we are doing that to others. And again, who is free from that? I'm not. So this is a very sobering lesson that Mahābhārata is trying to invite us today. Again, Mahābhārata is preparing the ground for its essence, the Gita, which prepares the ground for its essence, the Srimad-Bhagavatam, which prepares the ground for its essence, Gaur Lila, in our perspective. So we should pay attention to all those preparations. So if we are sincere students, if we want to properly understand everything, honor everything, and serve and love everything in time, okay, we should make sure that we are not skipping lessons, that we are not becoming a walking contradiction, walking spiritual contradiction, which is even worse, in the name of spirituality and transcendence, spiritual bypassing. So this is today's invitation coming from the Sri Mahābhārata, trying to invite us to a sobering understanding of dharma. And let's wait for a few moments and reflect before concluding where we are in relation to that today. How I'm walking my talk, how I'm not walking my talk, how I'm walking on top of my talk. What can be the reason for that? What expressions of kāma may be accompanying this chapter of my journey? How can I embrace dharma today? Is there something in particular that I'm contradicting myself? What can be done about it? Without self-flagellation, with self-compassion, but with commitment. So please share your comments also with us, so we can each get enlightened one another by the sharing of each other's heart, like Krishna recommends in the Gita in this connection. Bodhayanta parashparam katayantas tamam nityam. Thank you so much to all again, and see you in a few days, 7 days, 1 week for our next sharing.